Hello and welcome to Not Real Men, a podcast about masculinity, which is the most threatened thing in America. We all need to remember that, and there's no more masculine energy anywhere. My name is Laser Weber. I'm a trans guy. What's up?
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm a non-binary person with dwarfism, and I'm apparently a huge threat to masculinity. So.
Yeah. Oh, so am I. Sorry, I didn't say that. I'm also a huge threat to masculinity.
We are a menace.
A known menace. We have a special guest today. I'm so excited. Our special guest is a dear, dear friend of mine. He's written, I believe, 30,000 musicals. He is a talented musician. He's on a musical improv team with me. We're friends. He's, basically the godfather to my dog who loves him more than us. Please welcome Tony Gonzales. Hi, Tony.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Gonzales. I'm a cisgender bisexual person, and I think I'm a sleeper threat to masculinity because I cloaked myself in it for so long. Yeah. I've walked that road, but I'd like to be more threatening to it these days, for sure.
Great. Well, maybe we can help you. You're definitely a threat to the American way with all of your musical theater and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Just for the listener, can you tell us a little bit about some of the musicals you've written?
Yeah, of course.
So they know how to.
The most recent things would be Supportive White Parents, which is a musical comedy written by Joy Regagliano, books and lyrics by Joy Regagliano, music by Sam Janitis and myself. He's my writing partner. We've written almost all of our music together for the last decade at least. And Supportive White Parents is about a young Filipino college student who decides to tell her immigrant parents that she does not want to be a doctor anymore, and she wants to be a writer and do comedy. And what ensues is this like Freaky Friday-ish type of really extended dream sequence of what would happen if she had supportive white parents. Very satirical of American culture, and very, very full of heart and good songs. I gotta say, good songs, real fun
the songs
stuff.
Real.
Yes,
songs real.
And the other two things you might have heard of, we also write some parodies with our friend Rochelle Meese, who's one of our big collaborators. The most recent ones we have done are Bachelor, the unauthorized musical parody about the show The Bachelor. And then the one that we just had a show of this weekend is Real Housewives, the unauthorized drag musical parody. So it was all in drag. It was super fun. But yeah, those are some recent things we've been working on.
You and your musical partner Sam, who I think if we decided that like Bert and Ernie weren't dating, that would be you two. Except that Bert and Ernie are dating, so they can't be you two. You know what I mean? Like, but that's sort of the vibe. Everybody they sleep in twin beds in the same room.
It would appear so. I think we like for people to think that to a certain extent because it keeps us interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. I love this podcast as a way to introduce Colin, my friend who lives across the country, to my friends that live here in LA. And I'm glad by the end of this, we'll know everything about each other. But I wanted to do like a quick check-in as we are now releasing the podcast like close to when it actually comes out, which is very exciting. So real things are happening right now. I'll tell you one of the things that happened in my life is that I just went up to SF Sketchfest this weekend and did my show Gentlemen's Club, which is an all-trans comedy show. And I did our house was sold out, and in LA our house is like 80% trans people. At the Sketchfest there was just like a bunch of straights, and it was very like when you're playing for a different audience, and there was a wonderful I think cishet guy in the front row. He was very well groomed, but he had a wife, so you never know these days with the bisexuals everywhere. But I have a bit where I talk about men's restrooms and how you really have to watch out because if you see a penis, it will fall off. And I love watching straight men during that bit of just watching somebody talk about a penis, and it's like not a straight not a straight man talking about a penis is very funny because I think it's like Well, it's the experience of like, if you are a woman or a person who is constantly commented on for one reason or another, you're used to it. But men, I feel like, aren't constantly used to being just like, hi, I'm going to talk about your dick in front of you, in front of a room of other people who know you are the only one of the people here who has a penis. It's pretty fun for me.
Yeah. I unfortunately have that experience a lot where people will make very direct comments about people with dwarfism genitalia and wondering about stereotypes about it to my face or about it when I'm not there.
That's so cool.
It's really cool.
No, I really fucking hate
like,
that. Yeah.
It's like always the straightest person in the room too. And it's after exactly half of a beer that they'll like be like, go up to me and like in the most unsubtle way, because they're the straightest person in the room and they don't know subtlety, is like they'll say like, hey, so is it true what they say about what and then like looking down at my pelvis, and I'm like, wow, so not only are you doing this, you're just too cowardly to say what you're actually doing, which is not very heterosexual behavior, by the way, that cowardice of like not being able to say what you mean. But like that's and then so recently in the news, our alleged president, and he indirectly blamed DEI for the reason that a plane crashed in the Potomac River recently. And among the list of disabilities that he listed as hiring practices for DEI, he decided to name drop dwarfism at the end. And so that's fun. It's fun. I mean, I was talking to a friend, I was like, at least I'm in good company of like immigrants and Muslims and like people if I'm on his shit list, then I'm doing something right. Or
it's all it's all of us. it's just like
it's literally like, I mean, granted, this feels like more of a I exist, so therefore I'm a problem, rather than like I'm actively, like people in my dem were actively doing something to provoke the ire of this person. So with that, I'm just like, let's go all the way, man. Let's start like let's start doing anarchy shit. If you're already going to put us on your shit list, then like, let's give you a reason to do so rather than just existing.
Right.
Yeah. And then a alleged straight person and alleged comedian on The Daily Show decided to throw in his 2 cents about Trump ending that list with dwarfism, and proceeded to, for about 20 or 30 seconds, talk about people with dwarfism genitalia.
The way he does it too is like, he says like a really offensive joke, and then he's like, oh, but it's okay, I said this because I'm also going to talk about their dicks for some, like, it's like, that doesn't make it better. No, you've made it worse.
Also, like you're like, because he made a height joke, right, about how like we can't reach the controls or whatever, and then he was like, oh, it's okay because I'm gonna say that they have average sized dicks, but in comparison it looks bigger, so it's fine that I just insulted people, because now I'm gonna like put into people's mindsets thinking about people with dwarfism genitalia, and that's me. And so I used to think that like when people talked about this, it was like hiding some secret, like you need to unpack shit in therapy and realize that you might not be as straight as you're projecting. But now I'm like, am I a threat to you? Is that why this is something that you are like, because you're threatened by the possibility that like in your, myriad of bullshit of what makes a viable man or whatever, like that, like dick size is something where you're concerned that I'm winning, quote unquote. And like, that's, a threat to you, which if that's the case, good. Like, like good. Like, I don't want to get into fights with people. I value my safety. I value the safety of people with dwarfism, but like, the dissonance and the hypocrisy of like people with dwarfism being viewed by other men as like, less than human. And in that, like, we can't participate in masculinity at all. And our masculinity is a joke. And like existing as a guy is like perceived as a joke because of like perceived physical incapabilities and that kind of thing. And also like height being a thing that masculinity is measured by. And like to have this insecurity about dick size and like have that be like a focal point of like, oh, well, I have you beaten everywhere except this, but I need to have you beaten this area too. Otherwise, like it's just like the fragility, man. It is such like, it is wild, the fragility among, and it's just like, and like, so on a national stage to talk about like people with dwarfism genitalia, and like to not be able to form, like, it's obviously not the same thing, and there's obviously different degrees of harm that are separating this, but like there's still a Venn diagram overlap of like how people talk about like trans people's genitalia and that kind of thing, of like fascination with it in a way of like, why do you care? Like, why do you care so much what's in my pants? Like, what, like, I don't plan on showing it to you. Like, and you, and I don't, and you're not, and you're going to have to do a lot of legwork if you want to see it to recover from this shit. AKA, like, you're not going to, like, there's no world in which like this turns out like where I just like, I'm generously assuming that they have a plan when they say shit like this.
Well, I will. So here, this relates so much to an anime I just watched. And I also, Tony, want to ask you about dick size in the gay community.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Okay. I was like, because my Grindr experience is very little, and every moment of it was an extremely wild thing. But I went over to my friend's house last night, and we all watched formative shows that we watched when we were young that made us who we were. And I brought VeggieTales, which is so much more Christian than I expected. And my friend brought this.
Laser, I could watch that show because it was a Christian show. So that's VeggieTales. Yeah.
I've memorized every word of every one of them, Tony. I know all of VeggieTales, and I hadn't watched it in like 25 years, and I was like,
brush, the Water Buffalo song, the chocolate
100%.
Bunny. Yeah, okay, yeah, me too.
Oh yeah, both versions of the chocolate bunny song. Okay, my friend brought this anime that she bought at a store when she was 14, like used, and it's so there's this thing with, I guess, Japanese like media. For a while, it was like the DVD market was bigger than stuff on TV. So they could just kind of make whatever and it would become popular. And so this is an anime about a girl or a woman who is a superhero, but only when she's wearing a mask and nothing else. So she is completely naked. And my friend explained it to me. We were like, oh, that's kind of funny. And we watched it. We were like, okay. So this is just porn. That's that you watched when you were 14. But it's not porn because everything is like you can't say explicitly out loud that these are lesbians or that this is sexual. It's just fucking wild. But the point of the show, like the underlying like social issue, is that being stripped naked and everybody seeing and thinking about your naked body is the most humiliating thing possible, which I think is a very straight male gaze issue or a patriarchal issue of like, as soon as I know what you look like naked and what your genitals look like and what your boobs look like, then I have power over you and you no longer have power, which is like a very easy way to keep control over somebody because you can so easily control them that way. And I think that the like thinking about trans people's genitals and people with dwarfism's genitals is like a extension of that thing of like, if I can make this joke, or even like people of different races and that like those jokes that come out of the like white supremacy patriarchy thing of like, well, if we can reduce you to your body, then then nothing else you do matters.
Right. Yeah. There is this so growing up, I was very closeted. I grew up extremely evangelical Christian. And when I say grew up that way, I mean like I personally bought into it, admittedly. Yeah. Mea culpa, everybody. Like for sure thought I was praying for people in grocery stores if they looked tearful. And I was
cool. That's great.
Yeah, it was great.
But you thought you were helping. So it's okay.
It's so funny because I think there's an innate sense of compassion I have, maybe because of that, or I had it anyway. I think I would argue. I think I would have found that sense of compassion anyway. But sorry, to speak to the masculinity side of things, most of my friends were straight friends growing up because I was either scared to make friends that were out. Usually growing up in Texas, there would be this stigma about the people that had come out, like as in like, be careful around them. They want to touch your dick. They want to know what your dick looks like. And you're right that there is this stigma associated with that knowledge of like what's underneath the underwear. And with straight men, there's this truly obsession with who has the bigger dick. It's such a common like realm of joking, but there is this sense of underlying tension about my masculinity is threatened in comparison to someone else's penis size for straight men at least.
Do groups of dudes know how big each other's dicks are?
Some do. And here's the funny part. The ones that do know it, I'm thinking back to circles, like ones that did know it were ones that were like, didn't mind being naked in front of each other. But then looking back, not all of those people were straight. Turns out, right? There's like this more of this comfort with like the exploration of it.
Yeah.
But not everyone does. I'd say growing up as like in Texas as a Latino, my parents are Mexican, growing up that way, like in Mexican culture, there also is this big, like, keep those things hidden. At a certain age, it's not cute to be naked running around the house anymore. You know, like you gotta wear the clothes, all that stuff.
I do kind of agree with that in public, at least. You know.
Yeah, at a certain age, you shouldn't run around naked.
Yeah.
But anyway, to speak to the experiences on dating apps, and yes, Grindr specifically, there is this huge obsession with. It's an almost immediate question every time about how big. Cut, uncut, like so many details, right? And people are basing whether or not you're interesting on that exact thing. And it can feel like this threat to your masculinity in a lot of ways. You just feel weirdly like I don't belong in a certain group if I don't fit the criteria you're expecting of me. So yeah, it's a treacherous landscape.
I have to let my cat out of this room because he's going absolutely crazy, and I don't really understand what. I think he's upset about the conversation in the Patreon.
Yeah. Let him out.
He might be doing the cat thing where like you're paying attention to something else that's not him, and he's like, "How dare you do this?"
That's also possible. I open the door and he is not. Okay, there he goes. Okay.
Yeah, like I love that cat thing of like, well, some cats will like, not all cats will like. Do this thing where like if you want to pay attention to them, they're like, oh, I don't want that. But like if you're on your phone or on a computer, then they'll be like, hi, what's up?
I find it extremely relatable, and it's a thing I like about cats. It's just like you do, whatever is fine. I mean, I don't even care, but also what's going on and why are you not looking at me? That's why I have a podcast.
It's really fun. Fun is the word I would use to describe.
Fun is the word I would use. I want to circle back to you, Colin, after both of us have talked about this thing. About, I don't know, how much you think all of that stuff relates to this experience and doesn't relate, or what's the same or different.
Yeah. So, Tony, to address your point that like, because like I didn't do sports a lot growing up, which is shocking. You're
busy playing your violin and getting.
I was busy playing violin and being in theater club and having long hair and wearing Pokemon shirts to bother with that nonsense. But
and people don't talk about how much work it is to wear a Pokemon shirt because like it's not just wearing a shirt. You have to put it on. You have to know the Pokemon. You have to do.
It's more so the assumptions about who I am that I didn't realize were there until after that era of my life. But yeah, so like, I remember that, like, so I grew up in like Southern Maryland, and it was this weird mix of like redneck and like non-redneck like vibes. But there was still sort of that air of like vaguely religion, but not quite, of like Christian informed, but not like I didn't go to a Christian school or anything. But there was still that like very puritanical, prudish ideology there. And like part of that was like when I was growing up that, gay was still being used as an insult, and, like catching the gay was still like, not like, actually said, but like sort of implied of like, oh, well, just be careful around this person. And when you're saying that of like, they want to know your dick size and that kind of thing, it's like the straight people are the ones introducing that idea. Mm-hmm. Of like gay people being fascinated by that. And then like, and I guess that like and I'm wondering like how much of a chicken egg thing was with that versus like the conversations on like Grindr and that kind of thing of like that being, first. Cause I don't really go on dating apps a lot. I'll go on them for like 5 minutes and then uninstall them because I get frustrated and also get fetishized a lot, which is interesting. And
Can't relate.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Let me explain to you what fetishizing is.
Well, and I don't know if I said it on this podcast, but like also like I'm not. Yeah. But our job is not here to compare our experiences and then win. No. But the message I got a message one is just like, this might be a weird question, but do you have any pictures of yourself from before your transition? It's like, this might be a weird question. You think so?
It's like, it's not like dead naming, but it's like dead picking, I guess.
My other favorite Grindr experience is that a guy thought I was his friend Elliot and couldn't be convinced otherwise. And I was like, no, I'm just another trans guy. I'm sorry. I can't help you.
I guess men really don't want to be proven wrong about stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
They hate that. Very threatening.
So in the limited experiences I've had, like, you know, being flirted with by men or mass people, like there hasn't been the overt thing of like, what are you rocking? That's been reserved for the alleged straight people to wonder about my dick size, in my experience thus far. But there is sort of, in my very limited experience, like with, I don't trust men, but that's a whole, like with dating or romance stuff, but they make it easy not to trust them. So that's, or we do. But yeah, so like, that's a whole other thing that will be a tangent. So, being demisexual and being it's a lot of men make it very difficult once they start talking to be into them.
Yeah. Heard. Yeah. I think one of the interesting things I find about Grindr is that it's also, as a member of this community myself, it has a real autistic vibe of like, I'm going to tell you my thing and you tell me your thing, and then we will decide on our thing. And I kind of like the directness of it. I don't like that the directness is all about body shaming and completely a physical thing, because, you know, again, like, I don't know, demisexual is a thing I would use, but I need to trust somebody. And I think that there's a lot of, I mean, there's just straight up people on Grindr who are like, I am a Trump supporter and you will like it when I dominate you and stuff. And it's just like, oh, okay. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for letting me know that I'll like it. Yeah.
Yeah. You would love it.
Oh no, I was like saying like in that metaphorical conversation of like thanking the person for informing me what I like and don't like. But like the entitlement does not fall from the fascist, or doesn't fall far from the fascist tree, I guess. But with my experience with like being approached by men, I haven't had that happen where like, but there is sort of a tendency to like within the hookup vibe of like, I feel like I'm being looked through as far as what my body can provide for this person. And like, I've had perfectly pleasant conversations with men as well, like where like, it's just been very like flirty, cutesy, that kind of thing. And that hasn't felt like what's happened. But among a very specific type of neoliberal, very pro-capitalist gay men, there is sort of a prevalence towards like, and I don't think it's just dwarfism. I think it feels like it's very like hookup culture based of like, hey, like I want to experience pleasure if you want to experience pleasure, and like seeing what our bodies can do for each other. That's not how I operate. So like for me, it that hits more as like, oh, it's someone looking at me and just thinking about what my body can provide them or what its limitations are, which is what I just experience daily when I get harassed or that kind of thing. So it's not the same, obviously, but it's still in that realm of like, my physical appearance is what you're judging my worth by, or like in your eyes, like what I can provide for you is like deeming your interest in me. So I'm not really down for that. But like, and this has happened with women as well, of like, you know, wanting to check something off their bucket list, or like, I've always wanted to try blank or that kind of thing. And it's like, if people are mutually into that, then follow your bliss, obviously. But like, I'm not really, for me, like it feels in the realm of dehumanization that I'm not really down for.
For sure. Yeah. Well, the problem is there that you don't dehumanize women enough, which is, I think, a lot of what everybody expects from dating. So maybe that And I don't know. I'm not telling you to change your life. I'm just saying, like, then.
I mean,
try that.
Like, we haven't talked about this extendedly, but like, I was fully in that nice guy mindset, like quote unquote nice guy, and I was well on my way to like potentially becoming an incel before someone course corrected me, and was like,
just
"What
think
do
you could be president now if you were."
Yeah, I really missed the opportunity there to.
You could be on a.
God.
Cabinet.
People suggest I get into politics, and I'm like, I'd either get shot or I'd become corrupted. Like, those are feels like the two possibilities. I'd either be too radical and I'd be like, CIA 2 bullets to the head, suicided. Like, but like, sorry.
What a fun thing you think about a lot. I love that for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at my Instagram, this won't come as any surprise.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. I don't think about this a lot. It's just when people suggest I go into politics, which happens, maybe once every 2 weeks.
Right. Well, because you like speak eloquently at rallies and stuff, and you're very charismatic. I think that's probably.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're like,
I'm getting better at accepting compliments. I am not evil. I like to think that's.
Should we all give each other compliments and then we have to listen and accept them?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good exercise.
But sorry. To like just finish the thing. What was I talking about? I don't remember.
Going into politics.
Before that.
Talking about the dehumanization. And then Laser said something about insulting women more, and then that's when you had a thought.
So I was course corrected when someone was like, "What do you actually have to offer people other than absence of being a shitty person? Like, what do you actually bring to the table?" And I was like, because that's a nice guy thing, right? It's like I'm not actively harming people, so therefore women should be into me. It's like and it's like a basis of like neutrality being a boon, which is perpetuated in our society as a whole. When it's like, oh, if you're not racist, then you're a good person versus a neutral person, and like, and to a larger extent, it's like, so yeah, like you're not inherently owed anything for not actively harming people. And again, the most hot take I can come up with, but like. Yeah. But
it's
I
worth
say that
saying
to say that like when we say like I don't dehumanize women, like that is something I actively try not to do, and that I try to unlearn a lot of shit that I was brought up with, because I was brought up in the same toxic masculine culture that a lot of us are. And if things had gone a different way, I could easily be someone who does. And there's still stuff that I'm unlearning, and there probably will always be stuff that I'm still going to be unlearning. And I say that as like, not to deflect the compliment, but to say that like, people who are slightly aware that masculinity as it is right now, and as it's being perpetuated by the people in charge of like the Elon Musks, the Andrew Tates, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and you're like, hey, maybe I don't want to participate in this. There is a way that you can exist in a way that's like better and more beneficial. And you might lose friends. I know I lost friends, but in retrospect, they were friends that I wasn't happy to be around and felt like I had to perform to be around. And like, there are healthier alternatives, and that's going to segue back into complimenting, which is like,
love it. All right, I want to do compliments really quick, and then I want to ask Tony some stuff. But I will say, Tony, you have a beautiful voice, and you're a beautiful person, and I love you very much.
Thank you, Laser. Late? Okay, yeah. No qualification. Yes. Thank you. No justifying the compliment or qualifying it. Thank you. Laser, you are one of the funniest people I've ever seen on stage. You crack me up. And when you write stuff and I get to see it on stage, either you performing it or your musicals, I am always left with a fresh, good feeling and an experience that I've learned something I didn't know that I needed to know. So thank you. And I don't know Colin well enough to compliment Colin, but Colin, I think your hair looks awesome as soon as you came on the screen.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be the hair. I knew it was going to be the
hair. And you also, I am threatened. No, I'm kidding. I'm not threatened. But you articulate points so well that I wish I had that ease, that fluency with language just to say my thoughts. Anyway. You're extremely articulate, and your hair looks amazing. That's the first thought I had.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
It's
never
really
tell
hard to
if
not
Colin.
qualify.
Yeah. I truly can't tell if Colin hates it or likes it when I give you physical compliments. And it's a real.
I'm learning to be better with it, especially with hair stuff. Like I used to compartmentalize because I thought that like when people compliment specific things about me, there was an asterisk of like, despite having dwarfism or that kind of thing. Cause that's what it was for a while. Yeah. And so like when people compliment specific things, I'm learning to quell the anxious reaction in myself of like, well, that's just one thing. They don't mean anything. Like this exists outside of the dwarfism sphere, not as part of the totality of who I am as a human being.
I feel that way when like cishet people compliment my voice dropping or my like quote beard, which I know doesn't exist. But when like gay or trans people do it and they're like, oh, your beard. I'm like, I know you mean that looks good and not, oh, you're doing it, buddy, which like is so annoying.
Yeah. Colin, you were saying how when someone compliments your hair, you have to not think, oh, is it because they're saying that to balance with something else they think is not quote unquote up to par or whatever. My family, we call it a Gonzales reaction because on my dad's side of the family, literally every family member, mostly it's my aunts and some of my uncles, but you will say, for example, if two of them are in the room and you tell one of them, hey, your shirt looks nice today, the other one will immediately assume that you think their shirt is the most horrendous thing you've ever seen. They'll immediately be like, and my shirt, y la mía, ¿qué estás diciendo? Que mía no se ve bien? And right away, they'll just like get inflamed. Any compliment towards one aspect of a person means everyone else does not meet that criteria. Like an immediate sense of like being ready to feel insulted. It's so interesting. It's horrible, but it makes me laugh also when I clock that happening at like a reunion.
So I love a whole room of people doing that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Colin, I love you. You have so much love for the world and you're so kind. And it really makes me feel so hopeful that you are able to be like informed and active and also still care about humanity.
Thank you. It's really hard.
I know all of us are just we want to go like, but no, stop it. I don't believe you.
But you don't know.
No,
how
I just meant to hold those two truths, but also accepting me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Got it. Okay. You accept the compliment, but I
accept the compliment, but I'm agreeing that it is a difficult balance to like be aware of stuff and to be vocalizing against stuff and still have radical love for humanity as a whole.
Yeah.
And to Tony, I don't know you that well either. We're just meeting, but in my initial research that I hurriedly did after seeing Tony Gonzales, looking up that person on Laser's Instagram, not finding that person, and then in the few hours before learning who you actually were and finding out more about who you were, I looked at the amount of stuff that you've written. And I was like, well, I give up. I can't look all this before the episode. But from what I was able to glance over, you seem to have a take on satire that is like very finding nuance in a way that people could take the easy way out and like to make an obvious joke about like, you know, like The Bachelor, for example, or like Real Housewives or that kind of thing. Like there's like stuff that you can joke about that would be at face value, but it feels like you found a way to find nuance in that in a way that both humanizes the people that enjoy it and the people who are on it, and in a way, but still acknowledging that like it's a reality TV show, which I feel like is an incredibly difficult balance to strike.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everything Tony works on is so I know I'm going to be safe from people being shitty, which is wonderful, regardless of who your collaborators are. And it really makes me happy.
Because I feel like reality TV shows and the people that enjoy them are like easy to dunk on, or just to be like easy to just like write off. But I admittedly, I was in that camp of like not understanding reality TV shows or the people who watch them and like judging them. And then I know enough now to know that there's more to it than that. I still haven't engaged in it enough to like fully appreciate the nuance of like how people engage in reality TV and that kind of thing, and therefore parodies of said shows. But you seem to have a warmth that matches. It checks out as far as you'd be friends with Laser, and and a kindness. And I imagine as someone with a Mexican family and like who is Mexican and that Mexican American and that kind of thing. And you're also feeling some type of way about everything that's happening right now. So the fact that you can still show up in warmth and care and love for humanity is also admirable.
Thank you.
Laser.
The new plan for this podcast is just to bring guests on and try to make them cry. That's the new plan. And see, if this isn't 3 men in a room crying by the end of the podcast, I don't want to do it anymore.
That's not something I want to be a part of. Laser, your creativity and joy that you find despite being probably as aware as I am of the things that are wrong with the world is something that inspires me to not become jaded every day.
Oh God, thank you. I love you.
Love you. And it's honestly for the reason of your humanity and who you are, it is an honor to be in community with you. And I know that like you have your varied experience with, you know, being in the circles that you're in and like being of, like someone messaged me and was like, I love the Doubleclicks. It's great that you're doing and like, I don't know you from that. I don't know you from the Doubleclicks. I don't know. I met you as a person and then became aware of more so like what your sphere is and like that kind of thing after the fact. But you are a very easy person to show up in the totality of who I am around. And that to me indicates someone who naturally creates a sort of safety that people feel comfortable sharing about themselves with and a curiosity to know more about who you are.
Thank you.
Yes. Amen.
I was making fun of everybody else for crying.
You're crying. No,
in my own club.
I met Laser not knowing about the Doubleclicks also. And I got to say, what you said, you can show up with the totality of who you are around Laser. Yes, 100%. That's all I'll say. Echoed. Love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Great. Let's talk about somebody else.
I like how you brought up the compliment thing and we're like, once it got to you, it was like, nope, we're not doing like
I love it.
The eject button.
My friends came over and hung out with my boyfriend last night, and then afterwards he told me all the nice things they said to each other about me, and I was like, no more of this, thank you. Oh my God. He told my friend, I have a very good friend, and I invite them over to play Rock Band all the time, and Maddox, my boyfriend, told my friend, oh, Laser hates Rock Band, which is true. And I just invite my friends over to play Rock Band because they love it so much. And I just want them to have like a place that I love watching my friends be happy. But then my friend was like, oh, why? Then why does he invite us over to play it all the time? I guess he just does it because we like it. And I was like, you can't tell people this. You can't tell people that I'm God, I'm fine. So, Tony, how did you learn masculinity? Who are your where were the models of masculinity that were bad? Let's start with the bad ones.
Sure. Yeah. I would say, harkening back to some of the things I was saying earlier, a lot of that male machismo that's inherent in Mexican American culture was really just present in my family. There was a strong. I'll tell you the things that I found valuable, and then I'll tell you the things I found not valuable. I found it really valuable to have a sense of wanting to provide for people. I feel like this was instilled in me pretty early, that like masculinity equals you find a way to provide for the people you love. This is something I still value, the sense that I have the ability to find the resourcefulness in myself to provide for people that I care for. I don't associate it anymore with just masculinity necessarily, but it was a point while I was growing up that was really foundationally important.
I have been on several Zooms with Tony's roommate where Tony is making food just for the house, which is very sweet for me. It feels very like provider oriented, which I love, and also makes me wish that somehow I could make you live with me, but we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it after
I'll come cook for you. Yeah. I love
Fantastic.
that. I love that. And interestingly, I have to say, I feel like so many traits that I, as a younger person, associated with masculinity were taught by my mother, who, as I mentioned, is also Mexican. And there was a lot of this instillment of like masculinity equals being number one, a godly person. This is where things started to get problematic, equating my worth as a man being equal to my godliness, which is where I think this enmeshment for me really, really grew, of the idea of, if I'm not expressing my faith in a really sincere way, if I'm not doing all these things that, quote unquote, the Bible says to do, that the preacher at the pulpit says to do, if I'm not constantly going and trying to bring other people into Christianity, then I am not fulfilling my role as a man, quote unquote. This is the feeling that I grew up with. So,
yeah. Is that like you are a man, like the identity, I guess, of a person and a Christian and a man? Is it like all of that is split, is like your role as a man is kind of paramount to the role of a human or a Christian? It's just like, this is what meant, like, this is the things that the qualities of a man, and instead of just the qualities of a human. Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it makes sense. In tiers of importance, I would say, in my family, at least, I grew up with the strongest sense that being a Christian was the height of my goals. If I could do that, then everything else would fall into line. You just made me think of something. Really interestingly, there are some aspects that I associated with masculinity that I found to be really, when I was a Christian, really sinful. For example, I associated drinking beer with something men did a lot, like just going out for beers or having beers at family gatherings. And because I grew up with the idea that alcohol was a gateway thing to leading to sin, I really was like, people should not drink. So I would pour out my dad's liquor, for example. I was a threat to his liquor cabinet for sure.
Oh,
I used to pour out his liquor when he wasn't watching. I still pour it out. And and there was also this instillment in me of, we don't, and again, from the matriarchs in my family, this instillment of the idea that being a good man means not objectifying women, and not, my mom used to use the term, don't be a nasty teenager, quote unquote. Literally, don't be a nasty teenager. So I had this sense of like, a lot of my guy friend, my straight friends, who I thought were all straight at the time, my straight friends would talk about things like women and usually this is a straight men, women and girls that they wanted to hook up with and things like that. And I had built this wall up in my head of like, that's not something I talk about. That's not a thing I engage in. So I feel like my Christianity growing up constantly put me at odds with the sense of what a masculine person was. So in a weird way, I really early on as a kid, I felt really disconnected from masculine tropes. I felt like I didn't belong in that arena. I was not good at sports.
I think it's really interesting that like one of the things that sounds like Christianity does right is like, hey, some of these things that you think make a quote good man are actually bad for other people, which is good to think about, but also like, I don't know. After watching a lot of VeggieTales yesterday, I'm like, these Christian messages are totally wild. The other thing, when you said don't be a nasty teenager, I think it's so, I don't know if you have these, Colin, but like I remember those specific words, you know, that your parents say of like the things that you need to not be. And one of mine was don't be stuck up, and don't be like, yeah, I guess it was just stuck up. Like that was very stuck up and very self-centered of you, which to this day, like I just got diagnosed with PTSD, and I'm like, I don't deserve to deal with that. Has been my whole life. Yeah. Colin just gave a hang loose sign to PTSD.
Was it CPTSD or PTSD?
Just PTSD. I don't know the difference.
Okay.
What's the difference?
So CPTSD is more so like if you have a sustained thing that's like less of a severe and like inciting incident.
Got
and
it.
like, or it can happen just over a lot of women and femmes have it just from like being harassed and existing in patriarchy. but like,
well, yeah, but it's just like that thing of like, but don't be stuck up. Everything isn't about you. Even if this reaction you're having right now is definitely because of your PTSD, maybe don't make it about yourself. And I'm like, that's not what she meant when she said don't be stuck up, but it is definitely what I've like think about. Do you have stuff like that, Colin? Do you have words that haunt you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think just an overall sense of like having to like do more to be considered, like, and in my relationships, I'm learning that I don't have to be exceptional in order to be liked or to be accepted. Like, I don't need to, because there's like a infallibility that I feel like a lot of people feel a lot in general. And I think a lot of men feel as far as like, I have to uphold this like harmful thing that I've been taught, or like, and if I fuck up, then that means I'm inherently just bad. And for me, that's like, there's layers of, if I ever fuck up, then people will take the general subconscious thought of people with dwarfism and with disabilities as subhuman, and that will immediately come to mind if I ever fuck up. Like if I ever don't do anything right, or if I ever make a mistake, or if I ever do anything, then that inherent thought that still persists in the zeitgeist, and the fear of mine is like, no matter how much people have done to unpack whatever with the amazing media representation that we have for dwarfism.
Well, I know, I feel like that there's a really, I totally see where that's coming from, because media representation for dwarfism is like 3 people, and everything that happens that they do like, immediately gets extrapolated.
Yeah, and hot take, like, I don't love Tyrion as dwarfism representation. Like, he's better, but not, still is only thought of as a romantically viable option through paying for sex. And then even the one genuine relationship he has at the end, she was like, I never loved you, or something like that. Yeah. And then he kills her. So, if anybody managed to miss Game of Thrones, like, this is Peter Dinklage's spoilers for everyone's favorite season 8 of Game of Thrones.
The best season by far.
If you haven't caught up yet, please.
Yeah. Widely lauded by fans as the greatest season, that the writers didn't totally jump ship because they were onto other stuff at that point.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. But yeah, like, there's that general thought of like, I can't ever fuck up, and ironically, when you think that, it makes you fuck up. So like the whole, when you cling to something too tightly, it shatters. And but that's the thing, right? When it's like, and like, but when it's a systemic reason that you have that fear, and like there's valid stuff behind it, that's not just like, stories that you tell yourself in your head, when there's like reasons that you can tangibly point to and be like, hey, this is why I think like this, because it actually happens. It's like, I don't want people to victim blame themselves for feeling this way, especially if you're in a historically targeted demographic, whether it's disability, LGBT, non-white, like races and that kind of thing. Like, there's systemic reasons why you have that perfectionist mentality. That's in addition to like the masculinity thing of like needing to be this like, protector, but vulnerable, but not too vulnerable, but like all this other stuff. And 100%. There's just like, I think that there's this, so like, to answer your question, I don't remember specific words.
Great, but, cool.
Like, I'm trying to get better at being aware of when I go on tangents. It's going semi well, but
you're doing great.
I think like as far as like dating and we love that. We're all very neurotypical. It's fine. But like, as far as like anything related to dating or that kind of thing, I don't remember my parents actually having like the birds and the bees talk with me at any point.
No.
I don't know why. I mean, it might have happened and I just don't remember it, but like, I dissociated a lot in childhood. So which is what I thought what was called back then daydreaming, but like, I think
where did you go?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh fuck. Okay. Yeah. I remember that. That just awoke like 18 years. Yeah. Where did you go? Where are you? Like, why are you not like why are you not present? And I'm like, Yeah, that was said a lot. And then and then I would like tune back in and then like answer whatever. If I was in school, it would be like, oh, by the way, the answer to that thing is whatever, because I learned the model of absorbing information, spitting it back out, and then never using it again. And I was like, oh, this is just the American education system, and I can just game this for the next 14 years. So,
Tony, back to your like masculinity stuff. I want to segue back into it by saying, do you remember getting the birds and the bees talk, or like where your first interaction with masculinity and sex comes together?
I do remember my mom, I think when I was turning 11 or 12, bought me this Max Lucado book. Talk about a throwback to Christian authors. Max Lucado book about adolescence. And it was to help people that were going through puberty, or preteens going through puberty to learn birds and bees types of things. So she bought me this book, and there was this very funny, just to give you a little anecdote, moment where I thought I knew everything because I'd read the book and I had conflated a couple of terms. And
I just had to look up Max Lucado. He looks like a minister.
Yeah. And he wrote a lot of children's books. He's considered by the evangelical circles like a evangelical sort of family expert on family and health sort of thing. But anyway, so my dad sat me down to have birds and bees talk. And I remember he goes, now, do you know what it's called when someone touches themselves for pleasure? And I said, yes, of course I do, Dad. It's called menstruation. And I just had the terms absolutely wrong. I'd conflated masturbation and menstruation.
So close.
Standing ovation for Tiny Tony. We love little baby knows everything. I know. Yes.
It's like the beginning letter and the end few letters are. Yeah.
It was great.
Girl, I've recently people have started talking to me about periods, like girls I know, and I keep forgetting that people are still doing that because I used to do it and I just stopped. And now people are like, oh yeah, I'm PMSing and stuff. And I was like, just stop doing that. Just go on T for a year. And it's like, wait, not everybody wants to do that. Right. Just stop being a girl. Why do people keep doing this? Please continue about your menstruation story.
Menstruation. Yeah. So I think outside of that, it was a typical split up the kids in class. Gym teacher will do like male puberty lessons, and then the other gym teacher will do female puberty lessons. So it was pretty typical that kind of thing. Once I went through that in elementary, yeah.
Love that. Normal.
I love the normalization of gym teachers, like being like, you're gonna handle the most vulnerable, emotionally volatile subject matter because you do sports, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. And someone smarter than me can draw a conclusion to why this is a thing. But like, we're like within the zeitgeist of like all the content warning, this is like heavy shit, but like how people are like in some states are like wanting to do like genital inspections and shit. And like, like they're having gym teachers do that as well. There's some very weird parallels between like gym teachers having to do like doing sex ed and also that happening. And I don't have the coherent thoughts enough to like fully unpack that, but it feels like a thing that some people have probably written about who know more than I do, but it just feels like a flag that I wanted to raise, and to our listeners who are talk to your friends about how trans people aren't a threat, please. Like check your friends, please.
We've never hurt anybody. We're just little boys and we're fine. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Tony.
Yes.
We've done so many tangents and I love it. I'm going to ask you a question, but if you want to answer a different question, because I sent you this list, please tell me.
Sure.
What's the least masculine thing you do regularly? Is my question.
Yes.
Least masculine thing I do.
A sneak snacks into my room because I don't want people to know I'm eating them. I would say I hide some of my like snack consumption.
Oh,
Yeah. And that I associate with being like a shame thing. That's also associated with my body image and weight issues growing up. Having this sense of like, if I'm not doing the healthy thing, so sorry. I do want to make this point because Colin mentioned feeling the sense of carrying the weight of the people that you're like the communities you're associated with based on your behavior. And I wanted to say to dovetail off that point, it's so interesting to me because I felt that way very much too in terms of Christianity, and in terms of like being a Hispanic, a Latino boy, like being for Mexican American kids. But what I also attached to that was that if I did not meet that standard for some reason, or if I did any kind of behavior that didn't meet that standard, it meant I needed to internalize it and hide it. And thus was created the great shame engine of Tony Gonzales, and I suppose many other people. A sense that if I do anything that's against these paradigms I have to meet, then I need to internalize them. I need to hide them. I need to suppress them. And then we get all those juicy little like angsty roots of shame and guilt that just kind of build until finally I confronted them at some point in my life, and probably will continue to confront for much of my life, such as hiding snacks in my room.
This is a really interesting, I feel like recently, and I think it's just the more I become a man and hang out and my man friends hang out with me and talk about man things with me, is that a lot of body image stuff comes up that I never knew about when I was a girl. Like I'm really happy that my bros are willing to talk to me about that stuff, but I think it's also just like such a thing that is super prevalent, but also you absolutely can't talk about. Like it's just even like the most like, you know, wonderful men I know, I feel like wouldn't want to share an insecurity with a woman. Like it's a very interesting, like,
yeah, like it's because like the whole confidence thing is like you have to come across as confident all the time and like secure and like, you know, my body is the shit. And like people take that to the harmful degree of like, you know, my genitalia is the greatest gift that anyone could ever receive. And like, that's, you know, and then that goes into toxic shit. But like informing that, I feel like is this insecurity of I'm not enough. And like the unhealthy beauty standards that patriarchy has created for everyone, like across every spectrum of gender, like the patriarchy is like the whole tall, dark and handsome thing that men are afraid to like not live up to. It was men who created that. And like, even though, you know, there are people who like internalize that and use that as like a judgmental thing towards men and mass people, like it's still created by men. And like, it is a self-sustaining harm that we are doing to ourselves. And like I luckily have friends who like also I can talk to about this stuff, and because like Laser knows a bit more, but like I also went through a journey of like body dysmorphia and body image issues and it literally makes you look at yourself different. Like I look at old pictures of myself and I was like, what? Like I look different to myself than I did then. And it's hard to articulate that to like people who, I mean, obviously Laser, like you have a journey with that as well. Yeah. And from Tony, what you're saying as well, but like to people who haven't gone through it, it's impossible to really dictate. Like the image that I had in my head is literally different than what I'm seeing now that I'm like doing, that I've unpacked a lot of stuff for myself. Like I was an adorable kid and I thought I was just the ugliest, like that. But like when people scream when they see you, partially that'll it'll warp your perception. And like, I was telling Laser that I realized that I'm hot recently, and like, but Colin, a lot of my friends are like, no shit, like, but it's that thing of like, I still go outside and people will do the sign of the cross and scream when they see me. So like, especially as a kid, like that's gonna warp like, what do I actually look like? Like what? Because like people seem to be wildly different in how they're looking at me, and like I can't form like how I present to the world and like my own self-image is not doing well because I'm a child, and like I'm absorbing all these things that people are saying, and I just exist in this state of perpetual confusion as to what am I actually like, and why don't I get to decide that for myself? Why are people like so quick to designate me as either like a fetish or genuinely finding me cute or something to scream at? And like
hell yeah. Well, I mean, like, what a fucking thing to process and then like learn to love yourself as hot. Like that's so fucking harrowing. I get like, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really proud to know
like,
you, and I'm glad you're talking about this.
Thank you. But like, I would recommend to everyone to do a photo shoot. Like, if you're at a place where you can like do exposure therapy, maybe literally with the photo shoot, but like, just like if you're at a place with your journey where you can like confront that part of yourself, because it is diving into the deep end. If you have body image issues, to do a photo shoot, it's very like, I don't like flippantly recommend it, but like it is there. If you're in a historically targeted, I use historically targeted instead of marginalized, because like I feel like it puts more of the onus on the harm that the people that are in the systemic things that are perpetuating the harm rather than the identities themselves. But like, if you're in a historically targeted demographic, especially, and like that's informing any of the body image issues that you have, like as far as like, I don't get to have an image that wasn't designated to me by the white supremacist, patriarchal, non-disabled systems that exist and ableist systems that exist. Like, as far as like, especially if you can like work with someone who you trust as a photographer to like figure out an image, or like, it's really powerful as far as reclaiming your own identity and like getting to decide for yourself, no, this is what I look like. You don't get to say that anymore. Like, you don't get to say what I look like. I am telling you, here's who I am. And like, for me, it was out of a place of defiance and spite and like sort of a reactionary versus like holistic, warm journey of self-discovery. But that's where I had to start from in order to
spite's great. Use spite.
I think such a powerful motivator.
If spite's giving you energy, like flip and use it.
It's true. It is. And I don't mean to discount spite, but I also do think it's like an opposite side of the same coin of being like degraded and insulted, because it's still in reaction to an external thing rather than like figuring out, like, for me at least, it's like spite is sort of that versus like what is actually coming from me that's not in reaction to what people are saying, which there's nothing wrong with doing shit in reaction to like fight back. Like, obviously, if you look at my Instagram, that's like a lot of what I do is reactionary shit. But like, Tony, what you were saying made me think of like, it's interesting, like the paradoxes of like both like don't objectify women, but like also like is informing that like looking at bodies in a lustful way at all is sinful, and also like it's like multiple truths can exist in the same thing of that, obviously, but like it's interesting how like there's this mix of like stuff that is good and stuff that is like less beneficial. But
absolutely. We'll say yes. It's such a mixed bag to grow up with. I think the way that I grew up, I have to say, the women in my life, mothers, grandmothers, matriarchs, informed so much of what I feel like is good in my life, and in some ways the negative as well. But I just a shout out to the matriarchal figures in my life that I think did their job of giving me a balanced view of how to operate just as a human with compassion in the world. And when I say there's any traits in me that you find valuable and that I love, it's often things that the women in my life have instilled in me. So just as a counter to that, and I feel like it does make me feel like a valuable human, a good man, whatever that means, when I think of the way that the women in my life have brought me up. So that's all I wanted to add.